Welcome to another little tale, hopefully it entertains you. Please share the story so others may listen as well, so let's begin. The battle had been raging since dawn. Steel rang against steel in the valley below the broken cliffs, where a ragged band of raiders had tried their luck against the mountain pass. They had expected frightened villagers. Instead, they found monsters. Gorok the ogre stood like a boulder in the center of the chaos. 12 feet tall, thick-armed, and scarred from 100 fights, he swung his iron club in wide arcs that sent armored men tumbling like straw dolls. His skin was mossy green, his tusks chipped, his brow permanently furrowed in what most would mistake for anger. But Gorok was simply focused. Another attacker rushed him with a spear. Gorok caught the weapon, snapped it like a twig, and gently tossed the man aside rather than crush him. Another attacker rushed him with a spear. Gorok caught the weapon, snapped it like a twig, and gently tossed the man aside rather than crush him. A moment later, a figure stepped out of the trees. The troll was smaller than him, only 8 feet tall, but far leaner, long-limbed, with slate-grey skin and glowing amber eyes. Her hair was wild and tangled with bits of bone and leaves. Blood streaked her claws. She stared at Gorok. Gorok stared back. Around them, the battle continued. Shouting men, clashing weapons, arrows whistling, but for a moment neither moved. The troll tilted her head. Gorok slowly lowered his club. They didn't share a language. Ogres and trolls rarely crossed paths without trying to eat each other. But something passed between them anyway. The troll sniffed the air, wrinkled her nose, and gave a small approving grunt. Gorok responded with a puzzled rumble. Then 3 raiders charged from behind him. The troll reacted first. She leapt forward with startling speed, claws flashing. One man dropped before he could scream. The second tried to swing his sword, but she twisted under it and kicked his legs out. The third raised a crossbow. Gorok's club came down like a falling tree. Silence. The troll glanced at the crushed crossbowman, then up at Gorok. She gave a low chuckle. Gorok scratched his head. They fought side by side after that. Not intentionally at first. It just happened. When raiders rushed Gorok's flank, the troll slipped through their legs and cut them down. When archers targeted her from the ridges, Gorok stepped between her and the arrows like a walking fortress. They never spoke. But their movements began to match. The troll would glance left. Gorok would swing right. Gorok would stomp forward. The troll darted through the gap he created. A rhythm formed. The valley slowly emptied of enemies. When the last raider fled into the trees, the battlefield fell quiet except for the wind and the distant cries of wounded men. Gorok leaned on his club. The troll crouched on a fallen log, licking blood from her claws. They looked at each other again. Longer this time. The troll approached slowly, cautious but curious. Gorok stayed still. She circled him once like a wolf inspecting something strange. She poked his arm with one claw. Gorok flexed the muscle. Her eyebrows rose. She tapped his chest. Thump, thump. His heart beat loud enough she could hear it. She pressed her ear against his ribcage. Gorok froze. The troll listened for a moment, then smiled, wide and crooked. Gorok slowly lowered his hand until it hovered awkwardly above her shoulder. He wasn't sure what he was doing. The troll listened for a moment, then smiled, wide and crooked. Gorok slowly lowered his hand until it hovered awkwardly above her shoulder. He wasn't sure what he was doing. She laughed, a rough, gravelly sound. Gorok rumbled something that might have been laughter too. They stood like that in the quiet valley, surrounded by broken weapons and abandoned shields. 2 creatures that should have been enemies. 2 creatures who couldn't speak to each other, but who somehow understood. The troll pointed to herself. She thumped her chest twice. Raka. Her voice was harsh but clear. Then she pointed to him. Gorok blinked, then copied the gesture. Gorok. Raka grinned. She grabbed his enormous hand and compared it to her own long claws, spreading the fingers. Hers were sharper. His were bigger. She pressed her palm against his. The difference made her laugh again. Gorok found himself smiling, something that rarely happened. The sun began to dip behind the mountains, painting the sky orange. For a moment, the world felt peaceful. Raka hopped onto a nearby rock and tugged Gorek's arm, trying to pull him closer to watch the sunset. He awkwardly sat beside her. Their shoulders touched. Neither moved away. Raka leaned her head against his arm. Gorek looked down at her, confused but strangely warm. Then the arrow struck. It buried itself deep into Gorek's shoulder. He roared in pain. Raka's head snapped up. From the ridge above them came shouting. The raiders hadn't all fled. Reinforcements poured over the cliffside, dozens of them, armored and furious. Someone yelled, "Kill the monsters!" Arrows rained down. Raka dragged Gorek behind a fallen wagon as more shafts thudded into the ground. He snapped the arrow from his shoulder and bared his tusks. Raka's eyes burned with fury. They looked at each other. No words. But both understood. Fight. They burst from cover together. Gorek charged uphill like an avalanche, swinging his club. Men scattered before him. Shields shattered. Spears bent. Raka moved through the chaos like a shadow, ripping through legs and throats. Gorek charged uphill like an avalanche, swinging his club. Men scattered before him. Shields shattered. Spears bent. Raka moved through the chaos like a shadow, ripping through legs and throats. Back to back now. Gorek knocked aside 3 soldiers, but another drove a sword into his side. Raka shrieked and leapt onto the attacker, tearing him away. Blood covered them both. The battlefield spun in smoke and screams. At one point Gorek stumbled. Raka caught his arm. For a second they locked eyes. Both breathing hard. Both bleeding. Neither retreating. Then the final wave charged. Gorek roared and stepped forward. Raka followed. The fight blurred into instinct. Club, claw, roar, scream. One by one the attackers fell. Until finally, silence. Bodies covered the hillside. Gorek stood swaying, breathing like a thunderstorm. Raka leaned against him, panting. They were both wounded, but alive. The last surviving raider looked at the 2 monsters standing together and dropped his sword. He ran. Neither of them chased him. Raka slowly slid down to sit on the grass. Gorek lowered himself beside her. For a long moment neither moved. Then Raka reached over and tapped his chest again. Thump, thump. Still beating. Gorek gently tapped her chest in return. Thump. She grinned tiredly. The sun had nearly set now, painting the valley gold and crimson. Raka leaned against Gorek's side once more. This time he wrapped his massive arm around her shoulders without hesitation. They watched the sunset together. 2 survivors. 2 monsters. And perhaps the beginning of something the world had never seen before. Thank you for listening to our little tale. If it entertained you, then please share so others can be entertained as well. As always, tune in next time and be well.